I remember the teacher turned the TV off and said, you guys are excused to go to recess a little early.
Yes,
We're all
live
going,
now.
what just happened?
You just give us the cue, Steve.
You're live.
Okay, all right, well, we'll call to order the Planning Commission for January 28th of 2025 here in Royce City. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Bailey.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item on the agenda is approval of the January 14th, 2025 regular meeting minutes. Any discussion or a motion is in order?
Motion to approve. January 14th, 2025 regular meeting minutes.
Second. Motion approved in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Next is a discussion on parking in the front yard for trailers.
Zach.
Okay. So as mentioned, this is a discussion, I'm almost said another word, a discussion about allowing for trailers to be parked in the front yard. I'll explain a little bit more exactly what it is they're looking for. Had a family come to a council meeting, give a presentation. So that's where some of these suggestions came from and benefits that you see. So the first aspect of the code that they would like to change is right now it's, no vehicles permitted in the front yard areas between the front property line and the front of the building. Accessory parking may be for vehicles outside the front yard setbacks are permitted. The request and the discussion is to allow for parking in the front yard as long as they don't block the front of the house. So they're kind of in the front yard, but off to the side. Not the same side as the driveway, but the other side of the property. I get a diagram that I'll show you here in a bit. So some of the benefits they're saying is it won't block access to the rear yard for the firefighters because they want it in the front, but not on the side of the house. Trailers happen to catch fire, the homes will, no one be threatened, and then we are saving water. The other aspect that they would look at is the number of access points and the width of properties in order to have a second. Right now, the code requires that in order to have a second driveway, your property must be 100 feet in street frontage before the second one is allowed. So they would like to reduce it down to 70 feet from 100 in order to have that second access point. Some of their benefits that they're, oh, there it is, yeah, is that they believe that the average home frontage is between 70 and 85. About 90 or 85 to 90% of Roy homes would be allowed. They say that the code hasn't been changed since 1953. I'll just go back up and you can see in parentheses it was changed in 2017 and again in 2020. So some of the aspect is they're not looking at the entire changes, but that's okay. Appreciate having the opportunity, options to parking additional vehicles, trailers, and toys. Current needs some more parking in a day. And granted, they're thinking back to 1953 where one car garage was required and not a lot of, parking demand. Just as a side note down there in red, there are 4 zones, R16, R2, R3, and R4 that allow for properties to be 60 feet in width, and R17, R18 allows for zones or properties to be 65 feet in width. So all the properties in those zones that meet the minimum requirement would be excluded from this change. These 6 zones take up about 80% of the residential zoning in Roy. There are a few others, R110, R115, RE15, and RE20 to make up the rest of them, but those are smaller in numbers and size. So you're still gonna have properties that wouldn't be able to meet even the reduction down to 70. Section of the code that wasn't talked about, but would still need to be looked at is 1019.6, where it says no required off-street parking shall be permitted in the front yard. So that would have to be amended to allow for it. Front yard side, and then landscaping materials, because right now your front yard must be landscaped, and concrete and asphalt have been listed as a non-landscaping material. So those are things we'd have to look at. These are minor, but if the 10, 20, or 32 gets changed, then the same language would be for 1019.6. So kind of a rough sketch. You know, you got your house, you got a 2-car garage, you got a main driveway, accessory parking on the same side as the driveway. What they're looking for again is to the side, still in the front yard, because the front yard's anything from the home side to side. Allow it to be in this area, so it doesn't block the front of the house. It's off to the side. So the kind of the questions are, you know, do we allow for reduction in order to get a second driveway? If so, what? You know, do we take the suggestion of 70 feet, or do we say it's 65 or 60? Because there are those zones that have that small of widths. Also, thing that needs to take into account is how wide is that second drive approach? How do we allow it? Comes into play is the drive approaches under our current code can't be more than 30% of the width of the property. So if I've got a 70-foot wide driveway or property, I'm at 22, 23 feet, and a 2-car garage is generally 22, 23 feet. So by that statute, can't have a second one. So that would be another section that would have to be changed in order to allow it. So I don't think Public Works really minds the number of parking or access points. I just go off of what kind of UDOT, the number we can limit it to, the less traffic coming across a road. A small road like, you know, 2200 west on some areas, you know, you're not getting a lot of traffic. 3100 west, you're going to get a lot of traffic. I said 22, but that's one that Municipal Elementary that has a light on 56. That does get a little bit more busier, but some of these roads don't have a lot of traffic. So, you know, do we have a care if there's multiple access points to the road? I think busier roads need to be limited, mainly just so you're not having a lot of cross traffic. So those are kind of the areas that open up to discussion. There's a lot of things that come into play with this. That it's not just as simple as allowing parking, but allowing that second access point, how wide, and stuff like that. So kind of what I've got at this point.
Yeah, what are the thoughts and questions?
I'm looking at the benefits thing, and when it talks about not blocking access to the backyard for the firefighters. Depending on how far they back that trailer up, and do they go past this? I mean, if it's behind the front plane of the house by a foot, that is blocking the access for firefighters. But it also puts, if that trailer catches on fire, that also puts that within the ability to catch the house on fire, the structure on fire. So to me, both of those arguments aren't really necessarily benefits, they're more risks than they are benefits, because if the resident's not home, we're gonna rely on the fire department to have to find somebody to pull the trailer out of there so they can get access to the backyard. Shouldn't be their responsibility. There should be come and attack the fire and put out the fire. And then it's too close. And the other part of this that bothers me is the enforcement side of things. If they park too close to the house, that puts another responsibility on either the police department or the code enforcement to go out and now, monitor that, because that's now a public safety issue, not necessarily anything else. And so the benefits they've listed, I don't know that I see those benefits. The grass, the thing that I think needs to be considered is that when you're putting in an impervious surface, you're also exposing more of the water runoff into the city's stormwater system. And an impervious surface just is more of that. If you look at a lot between the structures and the driveways and the side driveways and the patios, we're already taking away a lot of the pervious surfaces on a lot. We had another driveway. It's again is taking more of that pervious surface away, but doesn't allow for it to absorb within the ground, but it's forcing it into the system, the stormwater system. And if that happens in a neighborhood where 20 of them do it, does it overwhelm the stormwater system? It's not designed for that much. The EPA wants us to have permeable surfaces and a percentage of permeable surfaces to stop that kind of thing from happening. So we know what water does, the damage it can cause. So aside from the aesthetics, because in my mind, I don't want to see that. I pulled up some numbers that shows over the last 20 years, the ownership of RV type, meaning truck towed or RV, has increased 62% in 20 years. Which means if you had 10 trailers or motorhomes in your neighborhood, one out of 10 had it. Now you have 1 out of 5 or 4 that have a trailer. And so they're permitted, and they don't want to block the accessory parking because they not only have that, but they have an enclosed trailer, a flatbed trailer, a boat, or something else that they want to park over there. We're giving them access to go ahead and put it up there, and it just, you drive down the street and all you see is every 4th house, a trailer, and it just blocks that continuity and that look of the community. And so aesthetics aside, the risk that the city takes by allowing it as far as the fire threat and the threat to stormwater is a reason I would think that we wouldn't want to allow this. My argument.
I mean, I definitely want to hear from the fire department before any real decision was made, because.
Well, I mean, the concern comes to say on the accessory parking, you do have a flatbed, a boat, another car. So the fire department can't get on that side.
Yeah, that's.
And if you have a trailer that's parked right up against the house on the other side, there's no getting through unless I go to the neighbor and break down the fence to get to the.
But then if they've got either the
They
trailer
also
or you know what I'm saying? If they're, and I thought through a little bit of the fire things, and I think there's a couple of issues. We had a house fire probably about 10 years ago in our neighborhood. And, it caught the fence on fire right in between and then started to melt the siding, and the fire department, it was awesome, like watching their coordinated effort. And you can tell they put a lot of training in, and the way they attacked that fire was phenomenal. But had they been, even 5 minutes later, the other house absolutely would have caught on fire. I mean, the siding was melting, and when they hit the fence with the water, I mean, it just blew apart. And I think that's true of vinyl or wood, like either of those, and if there's a trailer on the other side of that, proximity to the house, I don't think that alleviates the fire concern. In fact, it may augment it, because I think and this is out of my expertise, but I'd be curious to hear from the police or the fire chief, what are the risks of fire in a trailer? Is it an augmented risk in a trailer versus a house? And could they realistically fight that just from the fire standpoint? I think there's also some visibility sightline issues, especially in the mornings, when I back out, it's school time in the morning, my driveway is one that I can see well, and even in the mornings, like it's hard sometimes to see those kids. And so if you have a trailer blocking that view, and if you're the house next to it and that's your driveway that's close by, I mean, your sight lines are limited, and a kid on a bike or things like that. I've seen trailers that park, to where they're I'm not a trailer guy, so, but you'll see the hitch sticking out a little bit, you know, and somebody riding their bike could easily crack their head on, like, I mean, there's some issues there with proximity, but then if you push it back and say it has to be 4 feet back, you add the enforcement, but then you're also backing into the house type of an area. And then just in general, I know in your packet, you said we've looked at this twice before. This is the 4th time we've looked at parking. Because we redid the parking ordinance in general, where we said, you know, improved lots, but allowed some parking like behind the residences. You know, we really tried to, and that was kind of our first attempt as the planning commission to like really update, modernize, you know, so we did that. I think that was the 2020 update, but we also had the 2017 stuff that you pointed, but I think that was 2020. But we've talked about it for snow removal in the winter, being able to park in the front yard. We've talked about it in relation to IADUs. And then we've also addressed it with the in-home businesses, you know, if those in-home businesses are in the garage. And so like at some point here, like if you go through this and we allow it for all those different use, like at some point, there's like 8 different ways that you can use all of the parking. And now we're gonna put trailers on top of that. And I really feel like maybe this is just me from being here for a while, but I really think when we kind of took the holistic approach, I think that was a pretty reasoned approach to parking. And I'm open, like if we can find something that allows people to park differently or whatever, like I'm open to it, but I haven't seen anything yet that really, and I'm not trying to turn Roy into an HOA kind of a situation, you know, throughout the entire city, but we've got to have something where parking needs to be in solid places for safety as well as aesthetics, you know, but not be over the top. And I just haven't seen anything yet that I'm like, yeah, that really works for me. But that's kind of a little bit of my thoughts. But I'm open to hearing from the fire chief and seeing, you know, are there legitimate concerns on the fire side? Because that's not my expertise.
Definitely talk to him, see if you can come to the next work session, or if he's unable to, at least put a letter together of his concerns.
Some statistics or concepts or how they would approach that kind of a situation.
Steve, I have a question about your drawing up there. It appears to me that both the access on the left and access on the right are the same size in your drawing. Is that pretty much?
Right, because the zoning allows for an 8-foot setback on both sides.
On both sides.
Some cities have an 8 and 10 or.
Right,
or
but
9 and
ours
9.
is 8 and 8.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm looking at that, you have accessory vehicles sitting on the left side and a trailer sitting over on the right side. There's no access to the back and for fire or anybody else. I cannot
I mean,
accept that.
if you get a 25-foot front yard setback, you're gonna have to have a trailer that's less than 18 feet in order to keep it a certain distance from the house for people to get in and off the sidewalk. You know, it's gonna be a small trailer.
And your trailers are 8 feet wide, at least.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
That's what I was gonna
there's,
say.
if you've got a trailer parked there, there's no access,
There's no access.
period.
Easy.
Well, and I think that's one of the issues is none of the trailers are gonna be the same size. So you're saying, yeah, you can do this, but I mean, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to make it, like, they're trying to find fairness, but it doesn't feel like it would be fair because larger trailers still couldn't do it, only shorter trailers could, I don't know, you know?
I owned a 19-foot travel trailer. Unfortunately for me, I could park it on my property. But you know how small a 19-foot travel trailer is?
It's not terrible.
I mean, it's like, you know, sleeping on top of each other. They're just not big, so who owns a 19-footer anymore? Everybody owns 28, 30-foot, and that, I mean, that's total obstruction of the sidewalk. So I don't see a win here. And the argument about water conservation, throw down mulch, water conservation.
Well, just to make a point, Brian, we're not making Roy, these are ordinances that are already on the books. And we're not changing anything. We're talking about not changing, and we're trying to keep Roy the way we're enjoying it right now. We're not making it anything.
You look at the developments in the city that have restrictions, tougher covenants. You look, Cliffordshire, the one we all know. They don't allow you to store anything in front of your house. But they also developed a storage area for that stuff. as part of the development. Now, we can't go back and obviously fix that here, but the aesthetics that we see there, you know, makes it so that it's a pleasant community to be in. And so, if we, I really believe if we allow this, it's just, it really is gonna take away. If you're driving down the road and all you see is trailer, 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 what are you looking at? What are you looking at? And the line of sight thing is a real big issue, constantly a big issue. So,
That would be one of my main concerns
Yeah.
besides the fire.
But
Just
then
the
we
line
have
of
two
sight.
safety issues here. We have one in which line of sight,
Right.
backing up, and the other we have access for fire department or emergencies.
Yeah.
I can't see changing it.
Well, and I can totally understand why it's frustrating, because especially with that small of setback, you know, it is harder to get things parked onto the side without it being real tight and stuff, but I just, well, and every property is a little different too, so it makes it I don't know, it just makes it difficult to find a one-all solution.
See, most of
Yeah,
our
I've seen-
primary setbacks are 25, aren't they?
In the zones that I indicated to have small side or 8-foot setback on the side, yes, the R110, R115, RE zones, there are 30-foot front yard setback and 10-foot side yard setbacks. So I mean, they're in a completely different realm of stuff. But even then, I put a 8.5 foot wide trailer in a 10-foot setback, you're not getting by anyway. So,
Right, but I mean, if that's only on one side, that's not a safety issue. 'cause you
right,
can go
if
around
one
the
side's
other
left completely open, there's no,
yeah.
they can get, you may have to tear down the fence if you've got one there, and no gate, but that's an easy sledgehammer and go.
All right, so I was there during their presentation, and I definitely understand the frustration, especially because it's already built and they're being asked to remove it, and the cost with that, I mean, that's extremely frustrating. And I'm wondering how many people bought houses that were already like that too, you know what I mean, like, that they bought it, so they just figured it was fine, you know? So, I mean, that is,
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, every city has this problem where
yeah,
people just go and build stuff and not realize that, there's approvals or restrictions on what they do. I mean, you got people that finish basements with no permits and they're supposed to have them, or add on to the house.
Yeah.
Build a 300 square foot shed in the backyard and don't realize that, they needed to do stuff.
Or
So,
even getting permission to do a cutout for an approach. That has to be approved by the city. And you'll see some that just go and do it. They hire somebody to come do it without getting approval.
That's another thing we talked about not too terribly long ago, is your cutout for your approach has to be so many feet away from the property line, doesn't it?
we changed the code to allow it to go all the way to
Oh,
property
right,
line.
property, okay,
Unless there's a utility box
right.
there, then it needs to be a certain foot away from that.
that was my question. I couldn't remember what we decided on.
Unless they get approval from that utility company, say, yeah, go ahead and concrete it in.
Okay.
So there are some caveats to get around that, but
because right now,
water department or secondary water doesn't allow it. They won't approve those type of things.
so right now, according to our code, they could have the main driveway and then accessory parking on the same side and then they could put a pad in the back.
Yes,
Yes.
As long as it's
And a-
Behind the front of the
improved
house.
surface, And an improved
as long as
surface.
it's in the back of the house, yeah.
And I look at this, because garages aren't being used as garages anymore. Typically,
storage.
yeah, storage. You have two incomes in a house, that's the only way you can afford one anymore. One of them's not driving a V8 because that's too expensive. So you've got two commuter cars, then you gotta have that truck that pulls that trailer, that trailer, that trailer. And so you're creating, by this need, which we've done as a society, we're needing more places to park, yet we're not developing in a way that you can allow that much parking. And to go back and say, well, let's just start retrofitting neighborhoods, it's like, it wasn't developed for that volume of parkable vehicles. And so, yes, there are storage places, yes, family and friends,
It's just one of those things you have to think about when you buy a trailer.
absolutely.
That's when I bought my trailer, I had to think about that. Well, where am I gonna store it? Well, I have to pay to store mine.
Mhm.
because I can't make it work on my house.
Yeah.
That's life.
And in the, go ahead.
Cost of doing business.
But again, I had to plan for that when I bought my trailer.
I'm also worried that some of these, and maybe this is naive of me, but just having driven down the road, I mean, there are people that have, whether it's, where accessory parking will be, but I mean, you'll see there's these places for them to put their trailers and they're still on the road. And I just, I don't know, for days, sometimes weeks at a time, and I'm like, I just think this would exacerbate that to some extent.
Well, in the
Yeah.
backyard, aside from being behind the house, there's no setback that they could build the patio right up to the fence. To the
If it's,
backyard. What are the-
if there's no building, yeah, the concrete can go all the way to the fence. The only caveat is when it rains, it just can't flow to your neighbor. You have to contain it under your
You gotta
property.
contain on your property. you gotta pull
Cause
it
I'm
out.
just thinking, I mean, that's the
Fair.
trade-off here is if we don't allow it in the front, they could build that in the back. They've just gotta give up part of their backyard, which I know is tough for a lot of people, but that's,
And that's allowed in the code.
yeah.
Today.
now.
Yeah,
If
because
you're
we
gonna want
changed.
all those toys, you gotta sacrifice
got-
something for all those
But
toys.
again, with an 8-foot side yard setback, I don't know any
Yeah.
trailer that's gonna fit that
I
there.
wouldn't want.
And that's what I was gonna say, if I could
That's
go
the
back in
struggle.
time, like if I could go back to the fifties, I would allow way more of a skewed setbacks. I mean, if we had 16 feet, like allow 4 on one side and 12 on the other, because then the IADUs, things like that, like you could feasibly
Do
Like
that.
in the
Well, I-
fifties.
Well,
build
I
more
could have told
parking.
the
I probably
future.
should have said 10 and 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna get a smaller home, but for the future, I mean,
just build it longer this way
the
rather than
sad part is
wider,
even
but-
today, I look at developers and it's like, they put a house on it and the driveway side is squished as much as possible, but the other side's got, 15 feet. It's like, why not push it so it's the other way? Oh, we don't want, it's like, you're limiting yourself already on what you can do.
Mhm.
Well,
They're in the business of selling aesthetics. We're in the business of doing safety things. If you can't get in the backyard, I think that's a safety problem.
Absolutely.
Well, let's just
End of
entertain
discussion.
the idea that even if you did have enough room on the side to put a trailer, it's still a safety issue for the fire.
Yeah.
To park a trailer on one side when you got your driveway and your, a bunch of accessory vehicles parked on the other, it's still a safety issue.
unless you could pull it to the back and then it's not.
Can
on the
you
side,
imagine
I
if we
guess.
allowed
You have
that,
to go all the way to the back
Yeah,
past the
well, yeah,
house.
exactly.
if we allowed that, and then the neighbor next to him has their trailer there. That whole fire thing
a
you're
wall.
talking about,
Exactly.
one starts and it's like automatic, the next one's gonna start. And
Well,
so
no,
just
yeah.
transfer, we're gonna have a.
Well, and that's the
California
problem is it might work great for
Sorry.
one house, but the house next door may not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like because of how it's set up or
I
the
wouldn't
person
wanna
next
be
to them.
responsible for that, honestly. And my
But I
trailer burned
did
my
think
neighbor's
about-
house down, so.
I have a
Yeah.
client right now who is feuding with his neighbor because his neighbor parks his trailer. It's not in violation of the code, but he parks it right up against his fence on that side.
Yeah.
And it makes him so mad and it's, so I just imagine what that would be like, if every other house in our neighborhood had a trailer parked on the side of their house and cars on the other, so you had just a wall of car, house, car, all the way up the street. It'd give me some good business. But
It look ugly.
What do you need from us
Really
to go
terrible.
back to the commission?
Just some direction. I mean, I could research other cities to see if they allow for 2 driveways and something smaller than 100 feet. I mean, I will ask the fire marshal, to answer kind of that question, either come and answer questions or via letter.
Okay, then
So it's just kind of,
Well, I'm
I'd like to
definitely-
hear what he had to say, for sure.
Yeah, and I definitely want to hear from the fire, but I also want to, I mean, if there is another city, I'm kind of surprised if you'll find one that allows for that. I would like to see how it's written to make
Facilitate
it,
that,
yeah, to make that work. 'Cause-
And what it looks like in practice, right?
Yeah. So I do think, because like he said, I mean, I'd love to make it so people can park what they need to, but there's lots of things to
Yeah.
consider.
And thankfully, we're in an established city, because if we were looking at this, for a city that's being developed now, the size of lots they've got, it would be nothing but asphalt all the way across the front of the house.
Well, that's what I was gonna say too. We're built out and I mean, our neighborhood had a little section that got finished a couple years back and I mean, their plots are smaller than the rest of ours,
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
the houses are getting closer and closer, so
They
it's
are.
gonna be the same exact
Yeah.
issue,
Yeah, lots are getting bigger, they're getting smaller.
you know. Especially in Roy, I mean, if you're in West Haven, it's a totally different
Oh,
thing.
every
but-
Don't say
city,
that.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Don't say
Well,
that.
I'm just saying, they have some plots that are bigger than others,
Yeah.
Well,
but
they have-
most
Well-
plots in Roy are just, if they're new plots, they're not
You
gonna
have,
be
you have
big.
parcels in Roy that are half acre, acre.
Acre
Yeah.
lots, yeah.
That
Yeah, but
have
they're
a
not new
lot of room
builds.
that can do things, but they have room on their, their land to
Yeah.
do stuff, things,
Yeah.
so.
But those are ones that are previously built. I'm just saying it's gonna be hard to find a place in Roy that you're not gonna have a small lot like this.
I think of my neighbors that don't have space to park their big travel trailer. And they have a son that lives in another city with a big piece of property. And they have no problem dragging it down there and pulling back up when they need to leave and then
Yeah.
dragging back out there. So it's just, if it's not feasible, you just gotta come up with another option. You can't, I just don't know that it makes sense to, because it's an inconvenience for you, that we're gonna allow something that will destroy the continuity of the community because it's an inconvenience. I'm sorry, if you got a toy, you gotta find a place to park your toy.
Well, I think it's prudent to hear from the fire department. So let's
Well,
continue,
I'll
do
do
that,
some
and then we
research.
can,
And I like
Give you
seeing if
direction.
other communities, how they, because on this parking thing, I mean, we've, like I said, addressed it 4 times. I haven't seen it, but maybe there is a silver bullet out there
We'll have to look
somewhere that.
beyond kind of cities in our region,
Good luck.
so.
I think there's a win on this. Yeah.
There's not.
Okay, well, Steve, you have your, your direction there. Let's move on to item number 3, which is discussion on circular driveways.
So this portion of the discussion came from the same presentation. But it was a different thought and isn't necessarily what the resident wanted. Because a circular driveway allows for a second access point, so that's kind of where it stemmed from. But then, you've got a driveway in the front.
they're talking about a horseshoe driveway.
Yeah, horseshoe,
Not a
circular.
circular driveway.
I get a
Okay,
drawing
that
here in a
makes a
minute.
difference to me.
But,
Just go round and round and round.
So again,
You're
some of the
retired.
same
All
or questions, 1019-2. Do we allow for the reduction in the lot width? Allow for, an increase in the percentage of the property to be in a drive approach. There is an exception already in the code for U-shaped circular driveway, whatever we call it. It does call out particular roads because they are busy, that it's for a safety issue.
Mhm.
We can do it, but we still have the portion of the code that says you can't park in the front yard. So they can't park on it, they can use it for access. Now, one of the questions I asked Randy Scadden was, okay, if two things, is this for parking in the front yard or is this for accessing the property? And he just kind of went, uh-huh.
Mhm.
So our conversation, if we want it for safety reasons on busier roads, 3100 West is a good example, 6000 South, 48, 4000 is getting busier.
3,500.
35 is already
State.
listed.
Gotcha.
4300 West could be something, could we just add on to the exceptions and list those roads? Cause that, I only have 80 feet, but because of the road is so busy, I can get an exception. So we would allow for another access point. It would be access only, not parking, but they could at least back up and then drive point forward as they exit the road or onto the road. Or is it a parking type thing? So,
It will be parking if you allow it.
Would you allow?
It will become parking.
right.
Absolutely.
So right now the code still has those exceptions, but there's no parking in the front yard.
Right.
So the code enforcement officer can still drive by and say, oh, parking in the front yard. You can't do that.
Working for how long?
Yeah, I was gonna say for any amount of
My
time or
groceries in?
just,
Well,
Can I leave it
that's
open?
always, I don't
And how
know.
you like that?
That's always subject. Well, my opinion on it is that, falling back to the stormwater issue, more impervious surface, more problems there. If you're tearing out, pervious land to put in an impervious surface for a turnaround, that's gonna create more water issues. Secondly is I don't care how many times you tell them that it's not a parkable surface. There's gonna be a parkable surface. And now you're putting more responsibility on the city to manage bad behavior based on people not wanting to follow laws. And that just creates more headaches for the city. And I don't know why the city would want to change something that creates headaches for themselves.
How many scenarios do we have in Roy right now where we have circular driveways? I mean,
Very few.
Oh, yeah.
Most of them are on larger lots.
I know 2 on 4,000.
and are we
I
having,
can't say that all of them are legal.
is
I don't know,
code
they've been there a long
enforcement having an
time.
issue with those lots with parking?
Not that I know of.
Even if I didn't park, let's say for an example, I owned a lot and I had a circular driveway like this. And let's say I, as a resident, knew better not to park my car there. But anytime I had people come over, they're gonna park there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Again, that, I think kind of the question, how long? And I think if it's, a few hours, no one's gonna pay attention, because right now, if I wanna hand wash my vehicle
You can do.
on my property, legally, I can't do it on the driveway, because the water can't go into the stormwater, so I have to park it on the grass to wash it, which is, gonna be an hour or whatever it happens to be. So there are already situations where if I'm gonna do that, I gotta, violate some code. But again, that's the question is, do we allow it on properties that are busier roads, or do we allow it for parking? If we allow it for parking, then why couldn't we do the other one? Or,
If
they're
you allow this.
they're
for
kind of the
parking,
same
they can have-
conversation, but different ideas of how to get it done.
If we allow this for parking, they can stop access to the backyard, each side of the curb.
So
Side of the
I
house
actually
or
kinda
in front,
disagree
it
on
doesn't
this
matter if
one.
you can't get back there, you can't get back there.
But we have restrictions on the approaches. If our medium property width is what?
65, 70.
And right now our current ordinance says it can't be any closer than.
They could be right on. the property
Well,
line.
the curb cut can go all the way to property line.
Okay. But is that enough? I don't know.
So,
But it also eliminates parking in front. If-
yes,
If you're doing that and you're cutting that in, now you have no room to park in front of your house because you've got it full of.
25 feet is pretty small to get a circular driveway.
It is.
That's what I was gonna say. I just don't know how this even works practically.
No,
Because,
no.
I mean, you look at the width that you would need for the driveway itself, plus just, width of the property, plus the width of the driveway needed.
You need a 10-foot radius minimum, internal radius minimum to make any kind of a regular vehicle make the turn, which pushes the inside back 10 feet off the sidewalk. And then if it's 12 feet wide, 10 minimum.
You're
So-
You're already you're out of your front doorstep.
so, I mean, the ones on 4,000 are very, very small yards. And it works, but they're both on corners.
That's a big
That's-
difference.
And I will say though, that they don't park in the circular driveway area. They park in their garage or right in front, in the front of the garage. I've never seen anyone parking on that. So I'm just saying that we're saying what ifs, but if the owner knows they're not allowed to, I mean, just like I know when people come visit my house that they can't park on the street in the winter if it's gonna snow. I tell my visitor, I say, you can't park on the street because you could get a ticket or whatever. And so they pull into our driveway and, just park in front of our garage for the night or whatever, if they're staying the night. So, I mean, I'm just saying, like, if they know what the rules are, then it's not so much an
Knowing the
issue. I
rules-
just don't see.
Knowing the
the
rules and thinking that they can get away with it are two different things. Because we have similar things in the city I work for.
Yeah.
If
And
they
yes,
really
we
knew the
have that.
rules, they would be here and have a discussion, or they would be on the board, or they would
Well,
be doing
but-
something
But
else.
we're
as a
talking
public
about
service.
roads, we're talking about roads that are very busy though, so people are driving down them, noticing it all the time. So like, I would notice if these houses parked in front of their house all the time because I drive by them literally every single day. And I also think to myself, that's interesting that they have a rail. I mean, 'cause I've noticed it because it is out of the ordinary. And so I guess for safety reasons, I think it would be okay, but for parking reasons, I think not, if that makes sense. Just because I do know some of these roads are incredibly busy, and it does make it dangerous when someone's trying to pull out and they have a stream of cars trying to get in. It's just, and especially on the, like, some of the roads are wider, so it's not as big of a deal, but some of them aren't as wide, or they're not wide yet. So, I mean, that's just my take on it, that I think for getting in and out, I think it's actually is safer for the owners of the
For a
home.
safety reason, I have no problem.
Yeah,
You know, we could do like what the code already has. There are some exceptions.
Mhm.
And on there, we could, again, ratify, there's just no parking on here. It's access only. And then list a few more
Yeah.
streets that are,
I think just
Busy or
busy
getting
streets,
busy.
yeah.
that one I think has more merit to allow versus one just, park to park. Other options, and I didn't draw them, you could almost just say, okay, it's more like a hammerhead. Where I got my main driveway, but then I have a small, I could pull in backwards and then come out. And that could be in gravel, so I can, get it, we're not doing any hard surface, it can percolate into the ground. And then just say, okay, it's again for turnaround, not parking.
I like that.
So there, I think there's
Compromise.
options if we go for the safety route on those
Yeah.
busier roads.
Is that gonna satisfy the people that came before the council?
No.
Okay.
Because that's
then
not
why
their
do
issue.
it?
That's not their
What they
issue.
They're
want
looking for a
is-
way to park their trailer out front.
I know what
But I
they're doing.
do think if we're looking to the future, like, I'm thinking 4,000, I drive down that road every day. It's getting busier and busier. I personally think eventually it's gonna need a turning lane, at least below the tracks. And so then you have the roads even narrower,
To turn south and north.
or where
or-
the businesses start and stuff. You need to, it's
Most
not.
of the businesses won't be go
Yeah,
beyond.
it's iffy there. I turn it every day. There's not clear.
Oh,
It
in the
needs looking
front runner
at.
station.
Yeah, front down below the front runner
Mhm.
station. So I'm just saying, like, if we're looking to the future, like, and these roads are gonna get more and more busy, which we suspect that they will, especially,
They will.
yeah, that we need to be looking for safety things, I think. And so I don't think we just don't do it, because I think we look at it and say, how,
we're saying
what do
we're-
other cities do, what do, like,
We're
Yeah,
saying we're
the
looking
safety
at
part of it.
exceptions, and I think the exceptions say that if it warrants it based on traffic flow,
yeah.
then we can include it, but not just make a carte blanche if
I'm
on
not.
57 or on.
No, on my, like,
5300 South, there's
yeah.
no reason to put one on 5300 South.
Well,
Right
like-
here by the elementary school, there's no reason to put one on that road. Absolutely not. So
yeah, I think you'd have to do a road by road
you- and-
basis. I don't think you do, like, in my neighborhood, we don't need that. Like, it's just a regular neighborhood. We don't need
Well, that's
that.
why I kind of said
Specify which roads.
Yeah.
particular roads.
Arterial roads.
Some roads may get busier and busier and we can relook at it, 2200 where it goes by municipal light at 56. It may actually start decreasing because the light's gonna be at 31st on 56 and they're gonna start, regulating a little bit more there. So it may decrease. 'Cause some of us know that road exists, so we can get a light and get across, but as more roads getting across 56 have lights, 2200 may decrease in the amount of traffic.
I'm surprised 48 from 19 to the tracks isn't on that list. Where they widen that up and those lots are,
Yeah, it's
those are
kind of
dangerous. If you
it's a
go
strange
from
area right there.
Tans
yeah.
Drive down and you're coming down the hill, so I'm
Now,
really
if-
surprised it's not on there.
If Roy was a blank slate, and we could do it all
Oh,
over
yeah.
again.
Wouldn't that
We
be?
do a lot of things.
I would have no,
If I was
no
6'10",
front
I could've
yards,
done
no
the
accesses
basketball.
to these roads.
10-acre lots and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
it.
that's
No.
good. That's what
Um,
Steve
I think we build on
I,
sidewalk.
Yeah.
I think kind of building off of what Jason said, I think we need to math some math. Because I know there's gonna be, as a 65-foot frontage, does that really even work? And I think there is definitely a setback issue with the house. I think we realistically need to map that out and get an accurate thing, like what is the frontage to the setback that would actually work? And then if we're looking at this, and this may not meet the need of the people that brought it, but if we're looking at this for like the safety thing, the hammerhead may be a good compromise to where, we, allow more whatever there to where people could get that. Cause I mean, I get it. I drive the West Davis corridor and going out 3,000, in Davis County, like those people, I'm like, how in the world during school time or rush hour,
Oh,
Yeah.
like trying to get out of those driveways, like, good luck, you're backing into a
Disaster.
crazy busy road. I mean, I get the need for that type of a thing
That's why-
in certain zones.
Our current zone allows it on those
Yep.
particular roads just because it is. Now granted, UDOT also has to approve it.
Mhm.
But if UDOT gives them that second access, I have no problem saying, yes, let's do it. No parking, but. get
And,
that
and
right.
corner lots, we could look at something there, cause they're a different animal, you know,
Yeah.
there may be something, if you have a corner lot, we can do something, but I mean, a lot of these, you're gonna just be asphalt in front of your house or concrete. I mean, that's all you're gonna get, if it's even, like you said, you're right at your doorstep, and
But
I mean, I guess some of that could be a personal choice if the person wants that, but I think we've gotta figure that.
What I think you're gonna ultimately
out.
see is a lot of gravel. People aren't gonna pave it. People aren't gonna put any kind of surface on it. They're just gonna drive across their grass. And it's gonna look
yeah,
terrible.
Put down road base or something to call it, and it looks terrible.
Well, we could put something in there that it needs to be part of your
'Cause
landscaping.
there are pervious surfaces you can get that are hard, but it's not cheap.
Mm-mm.
A pervious asphalt is available. It's expensive,
Very expensive.
very expensive, and you can put in pavers that allows it to, percolate through the spaces.
Unless
Still-
it's done
still not
right,
cheap.
that still doesn't look
Still
very
not cheap.
cheap.
Yeah, 20
No.
years, 10 years, it's.
Then it's full of weeds and grass, and it looks like,
All I suggest is don't make it something that looks good. Cause what I think looks good, what Kevin thinks
Yep.
looks good, what
absolutely.
Tor is, it's gonna be completely
Absolutely.
different.
Not our
Yep.
job.
I'm sort of speaking,
Yeah.
just, if we're talking about finding a solution for people to remedy the safety issue of getting out on these roads, I think there's options.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that it has to be a drive across my front yard, a little turnaround, hammerhead turnaround.
Sounds really
If-
tough, yeah.
I mean, to me, that sounds like a great solution to an issue without having to add another access to the front of my yard and destroying my whole front yard.
You want me to look at, see if other cities allow for circular driveways, what their code
Yeah.
is? And
A
then
little
if there's
turnaround.
options for that hammerhead type thing.
Well, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, if you did the hammerhead, because you were suggesting maybe you could put gravel there instead, well, that could be put into your lawn, like your
Well, and
landscape somehow,
It
I
is
don't know.
very-
how- I'm
Just
not
being realistic, it's
creative,
not gonna
but-
look good, no matter, but
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of people put rock on their things though, so I mean, if they're really creative, they might be able to make it look good.
but the reality is the reason we're talking about this is because people want to park their trailer up front.
Mhm.
That's why we're talking
Well,
about
the
this.
circular driveway is not.
It was a different idea.
It was a different thought. But, because what, okay,
By
the
a
council
different-
member was
it was a
saying
different
to
person.
contradict what the resident wanted. Because they were saying no parking in the front yard. They even provided a picture, which I put in your packet,
Of
of
what
the
they
trailer
don't
in the
want.
front yard.
It's
And
not this.
I
Mhm.
actually stood up and said, Randy, this is gonna,
Do that.
it's not what they want. And we're gonna have to redefine what parking in the front yard is and so. But I needed to bring it forward. I'll do some research, figure out what there is out there and, if there is language in other cities, then we can look at it.
There have been some examples of, like, let's just throw Layton out there. If Layton has it, I'd love to see some samples even from Google Earth or whatever, what that actually looks like. We're gonna keep you busy, Steve.
I get paid by the hour, so that's fine with me.
Well, I feel good about that, so.
An engineered drawing of the specs of what that would, what that would map out to.
Color code.
He keeps shaking his head.
Well, he's looking at the pictures in the
Oh,
packet.
Yeah, that looks terrible. Especially that one right there.
And these are actually good examples.
That one looks terrible.
Well,
I've
yeah.
never seen that one.
This
I've
is
driven
the
by that
not
one.
this.
Well, there was one that's their property that has the trailer off to the side. There's one that's actually, they put it as a bad example because the trailer actually goes in front of the house.
right.
Like a foot or two.
Yeah.
Then they gave you one that's really obvious because they parked it perpendicular.
Yeah.
But I mean, even in these pictures where they've got it, paved and, these are tidy lawns and, if I had to see this every house.
Even every other house or third house, it still would be. You wouldn't want to live there.
See, to me, I don't think it looks that bad, but because I see worse yards than I'm like, if the yard looks nice, then I'm happy.
It's not our job to determine what
Yeah.
looks good and what doesn't look
Right.
good. It's
I think that's
our
the
job to
point,
do
yeah.
what is safe for the public,
Right.
period.
If you can go
Move
in
on.
and take a picture of
Health, safety,
a
welfare.
road
Health, safety, welfare.
and then superimpose trailers every third houses down that road, and you see the difference from the visual of a road approaching it to, having the clear sight, no obstructions, to now every third house under obstruction, it's gonna be a noticeable change.
Yeah.
And you're gonna go, wait a minute, this isn't the same neighborhood, this hasn't got the same continuity that we'd hoped for. So as I vision this, it's like, holy crap. Because I do have a house that has a trailer right on the side, and I can imagine that that's now repeated every third house going, yuck.
And I acknowledge the fact that our decision is supposed to be based on aesthetics.
Yeah.
It's health, safety and well-being. I get that. So
Yep.
that's why I'm shaking my head.
Why
without
shouldn't
comment.
it, why shouldn't it be about aesthetics though? Why shouldn't it be about the way we want the community to
Because
look?
what's beautiful to you isn't beautiful to,
That's where we have
to
to be
me,
careful.
and I'm gonna get a little bit libertarian here, but I mean, honestly, people have a right to do on their property what they want until there's a health, safety, or welfare, and not to get all preachy, but in the preamble of the Constitution, those are the dictates that we have that our government's founded on, and so like, whether it's beautiful or not, whether somebody paints their house pink or green or yellow or
Or blue.
like, I don't care. I mean, people really need to have that liberty and for the most part to do what they want on their property. When there's the health, safety, welfare, I have concerns there, and that's at least where I come from. So, I mean, you're right. I mean, aesthetics matter, right? There's things that my neighbors do that I don't like I not put plastic up on the side of their carport to kind of make it closed in for a garage. I think it looks like it looks
good.
interesting,
Look
but
good, yeah.
And if they're
But, I
listening,
mean,
they
it-
don't know.
well, and that's fine, I'm sure they don't like the color of my house and that's fine, but like those things.
Yeah.
It's their house, it works for them, it meets their needs, so good for them.
I mean, they will have that's how people, a lot of times these come up because someone turns me for something, so they will have, some neighbors won't like it, and that's just part of
On your
it.
street.
Yeah,
It could be, I got a ticket and therefore I'm gonna drive around for a bit and tag everybody that has the same things, problem as me.
Yeah, but it's hard with a lot of things, because if we try to create ordinances and things for the one, it was like when Mr. Bradford came in with the chickens, right? Like clearly his property, responsible individual, and that's where, I'm glad that we paused it, because it's like, okay, let's take this out rather than spot zoning. Let's find something that works for the community, and I like where we got on that. So the parking, same kind of a thing, rather than, the onesie twosie, like let's keep doing things that work for the whole, because when you get into dictating the one, like it may work for one scenario, but then for 70 others, it doesn't create other unintended consequences. So I think we've got to be measured and do what's best for the community here. And so that's where, I think the direction we gave you on that, Steve, is great for us to come back and see if there are viable alternatives on some of this stuff. And, sometimes it's good to go through this process and then come back again and get some of that feedback, because we may have some other ideas or thoughts, or as you're driving down the road, you're like, oh, that actually really works in that scenario. That could work in Roy as well.
Hopefully I can get all this done by next month, but we'll.
I believe in you, Steve.
You get paid by the hour, Steve, so
Seems like I heard that somewhere.
Yeah.
throw your own words back at you. So, commissioners minute, I don't have anything, any of the other commissioners?
No,
Okay, Steve, staff update.
You may or may not know, the state liquor store there on 55, 56 is under construction. The great thing about that one is, again, they don't have to coordinate with the city, but the contractor is in contact with Public Works to look at the water lines and sewer lines and storm drain, and they'll get with the building official just to kind of have on standby, so to speak, that, hey, look at this. So they're doing really well, especially for a state agency to include us, which we really like.
Thank you note.
Do what?
Thank you notes. Come back to Roy anytime you want.
I'm just glad they stayed in Roy.
Yeah.
They'll probably close the one on 19 and they're still here in Roy. You know, some people don't necessarily like that thought, but for me, it's like, it's a tax revenue. You know, 50% of that comes straight to Roy. And if we'd lost that, that's a big revenue generator as well. So, other than that, I think most of the things, I don't know if you remember the project called Echelon. It was that, 4-story building that just south of Les Schwab. The previous developer allowed the permits to expire and the planning commission's approval to expire. They sold it and you will see it next month for site plan approval. It's back up, getting ready to do. So 2 single-family homes replaced with 40, I think it's 36 units and some commercial space. So it'll help with the budget type stuff.
What about the Wendy's? Is that still?
Yeah.
Wendy's had site plan, just finished their site plan, so we'll have a pre-construction meeting within the next week and a half.
Where will they be?
Excited
at?
to see what they can.
The old, let's see, what they, I can't remember.
Dr. Jones?
The old Dr. John. They don't like to be called that. It's like Vern's, whatever it
Next
was.
to Ron.
So are they bulldozing the old building?
Yeah.
It's a safe.
They bulldoze that.
It's just what we know.
Well, I'm excited
You'll
to
be
see
able
that
to
one
get your
because that
Baconator
was
soon
one of our
after
first
that.
ones with the
Yes.
new, like aerodynamic.
biggie
or-
bag.
That's good.
I can't think of the word right now.
Aerospace.
Yeah,
Like a
aerospace
gas
design.
station.
So
It
I'm
won't have,
excited.
it won't have big wings.
Well,
coming
yeah,
out.
yeah, but you know, but
Sorry,
it'll,
We're not very good at.
I like,
listening
I want to
across.
see what it looks like.
The Dr. John's, the one we were talking about, wasn't it like a gas station or something before?
Vern's is what it was called.
Burns?
Uh-huh.
What was it? What was Vern's? Was that a C-store?
Kind of an old gas station repair shop type stuff.
That's kind of cool.
So
Oh, that's right.
the property owner came in and I said, oh, little Dr. John. He goes, no, you don't want to be known by that. It's Vern's. Okay.
It's the ugly pink building.
The dilapidated pink building,
We'll just call it
formerly known as Vern's.
that.
Other than that, that's all I've got.
Okay, well, last item, motion to adjourn.
Oh, I was like,
Do
what
we
is
have a
it?
second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye. It's always
Any
fun to see you.
opposed?
No
I was like,
criticism.
what